So last year, the 2020 Yellowstone Limited Edition Bourbon featured a 7-year-old whiskey finished in Armagnac brandy casks. Not one of my favorites, especially after trying the Bardstown Bourbon Company's Chateau de la Baude. This year, instead of France, Yellowstone went to my family's homeland in southern Italy to finish the 2021 Yellowstone Limited Edition Bourbon in Amarone casks. Suono delicioso, benvenuto al Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C. from the Mash and Drum, and today we are talking about Stephen and Paul Beam's Limestone Branch Distillery in Lebanon, Kentucky. Still a pretty young distillery, founded in 2011, and like most young distilleries, it's working toward producing its own whiskey brands all in-house. So while their stuff ages, the distillery is still producing its Yellowstone line of sourced bourbons, including the newest edition, this 2021 Limited Edition Bourbon. So Yellowstone's parent company, Luxco, helps with access to local Kentucky bourbons to source from to help make up the Yellowstone lineup. But each year, Yellowstone releases a limited edition bourbon, which typically contains portions of the final product finished in a different finishing cask, which is typically wine, or creating a blend with some higher aged bourbons. So if you look back historically, the 2020 Yellowstone Limited Edition Bourbon, which I mentioned, was featured a 7-year-old whiskey finished in Armagnac brandy casks. It was also blended with other Kentucky straight bourbon whiskeys. The 2019 Yellowstone LE was a 9 and 12-year blend. If you go back to 2016, that LE was a blend of both 12-year-old and 7-year-old bourbons, which were then blended and finished in new wine barrels that were toasted rather than charred. Now this year, the 2021 Yellowstone Limited Edition features whiskey finished in Amarone casks. All right, so let's open that up and let's talk about what Amarone is. Well, Amarone is actually a very big pour there. It's a rich and expensive style of red wine that originates from Valpolicella in the Veneto region of northeastern Italy. It's known for its very strong, powerful flavors. It also has a high alcohol percentage of up to 15 to 16%. It's a concentrated wine that is rich with fermentable sugars that bring dark and rich flavors like fig, cinnamon, plum, black cherry, brown sugar, and chocolate. I mean, to have those flavors combined with a nice aged bourbon definitely piqued my interest to trying this bottle. All right, so the blend. The 2021 LE release is a blend of 2 bourbons. The first is a 7-year-old bourbon finished for an undisclosed amount of time in said Amarone casks. And also in there is a 15-year-old Kentucky bourbon. Now this is bottled at 101 proof with roughly 22,500 bottles available, which is a 50% increase in production over last year's release. Carries an MSRP of about $100. I paid about $120 with tax. I think it was a little bit over 100, but there you go. All right, so let's dive into the nose here. The nose is awesome on this bourbon. That's all I can really say. The first thing that jumps out is the dark fruits. I mean, I mentioned those dark fruits coming out in from the Amarone, from the wine, and it's all here. The first thing that jumped out at me is I couldn't really distinguish whether it was a blueberry or a raspberry. We get a really nice dark berry. Definitely a slight nuttiness to it. It's a really beautiful amount of chocolate here too. It's got like a slight tartness, which makes me think of like kind of red and tartness, maybe like a pomegranate type thing going on. But what's also very present here is a very just beautiful aged bourbon nose. I mean, you get some of these like the musty, dusty type of bourbon notes that you get in here. A ton of vanilla, a little bit of like toffee / butterscotch in there as well. Definitely rich caramels, brown sugars. But yeah, the overlying trait with this nose so far. It's the dark fruit characteristics. It's very jammy, very dark fruity, very, very dark fruit forward. Little chocolate covered raisin here as well, which is really nice. I mean, I could see this really kind of opening up as you kind of get down the glass here. Let's try it. Here we go. So the Palate, even at 101 proof, actually brings you a lot more spice than I thought it would. Nice little prickly spice on the front end, some black pepper. But yeah, the jammy notes kind of take over. I think the Palate matches the nose somewhat. You get some of those dark berries. Yeah, the raspberries there, the dark fruits, chocolate covered raisin. But what I didn't really get on the nose was like this lingering spice characteristic that's carrying through the whole thing. That makes me think there's maybe some high rye bourbon going on in there. Man, the chocolatiness is there. I do like the mix of dark fruits with those, the older bourbon notes going on, like dark rich vanillas, dark rich caramels, brown sugars. A little bit of that musty oak funk too, which is really nice. All right, so third sip in, the more you drink this, I feel like the spice starts to linger off a little bit, as you think it would, but it's still there. Definitely hangs out around the finish. I'd say this is like a medium finish bourbon. Almost kind of has like a ginger snap thing going on the back end. A little bit of toasted oak as well. But yeah, all the fruit jammy notes are still up front. It carries that spice from front to back. Man. This one surprised me when I tasted it, because I wasn't a big fan of last year's, just because, well, look, I was coming off the Chateau de Labaude, Bardstown Bourbon Company, which was 12-year-old MGP finished in an Armagnac cask. That thing was ridiculous. That's a legendary bottle. Probably never see that one again or experience that one again with that high-age MGP stuff in it. But that was a much younger whiskey, only being about 7 years old when you compare it to the 12-year-old MGP. But this, I think, is starting to make up for it. So I wasn't really sure what to make of this one. The best part about this bourbon is you get the layers of fruit, you get the layers of chocolate, the nuttiness, the dark chocolate almond, maybe a slight hint of like pecan, little maple syrup too. All these flavors that come to the forefront. But you never lose the backbone of the bourbon. The finish doesn't overpower it. So if you're a fan of bourbons that really, you want to really feel the finish, you want that wine cask to just take over the palate, this one's really not for you. If you still want to keep the backbone of the bourbon intact, you want to taste that 15-year-old bourbon in there, the balance of the kind of the musty and the dusty notes, the really nice oak, the chocolate, the charred oak, deep rich vanillas and caramels. If you still want that to be, the core of what you're tasting, with some of those, the Amarone just complementing those flavors, then I think this is a really, really great example. Yeah, and to top it all off, it just has like this nice lingering spice that goes through the whole thing. You would think in the Amarone cask, the wine cask would really smooth this out. So for people that want like that really nice, easy sipping experience, I think that's somewhat there the more you sip it, but I think people will be surprised at the spice level that this has. It does have a nice little spice kick to it. Like I said, like a ginger snap with black pepper on it, all throughout the experience from front to back, the dark fruits, the chocolate. This was a surprise. Let's go to the final breakdown. All right, final breakdown time. MSRP is $100 on this. Now I paid, it was a little bit more than that here where I got it in Ohio. I paid about $120 with tax. Secondary, haven't really seen these too much, but I remember last year seeing this for about $200 to $225, around that area. When you talk about availability, now it is limited, but remember, as I mentioned earlier, there's 22,500 bottles of this. So even though it is a limited release, if Yellowstone is available in your area, in your state, you might have some good odds to finding this one. All right, so for the value of this, I say the value is even. I like the fact that you got some 15-year-old bourbon here, which you can taste. You can taste it pretty I feel like you get a really good indication of some older bourbon in here. I don't feel like you're just getting a smidgen of it. I feel like the notes for a good aged bourbon are present, but then you get, you know, an Amarone cask finish, which probably was not cheap to add to this bourbon as well, that being a 7-year-old. So I feel like between those two, 100, 110, 120 bucks, I feel like it's the value's even. What's the most I'd pay for this? I think, given that I paid about 120 for it, I really wouldn't go higher than that. Like I said, I think the value is even. I like it right at that price point. Is this a recommend? You know, for me, yes, this is a surprise. I really enjoy the flavors in this bourbon. I love the spiciness factor from front to back. I love the dark fruits. I love the chocolates. I love the nuttiness that's in it. I like the wine finish, and I liked it mixed with those ultra-aged bourbons. And like I said, the best part is the finish did not take over the core flavors of what a good, you know, high-aged bourbon should taste like. So if that sounds like your flavor profile, I think you could get this and you would absolutely love it. But remember, it does have a little bit of a spice kick to it. If you don't like that, walk away, because it does carry some nice spiciness to it. But yeah, overall, really, really good release from Yellowstone. I really like the use of that wine cask, and it's kind of nice to find a newer type of finish in a world where, you know, bourbons and whiskeys are being finished and everything under the sun. Can't say I've had anything in an Amarone cask, but glad I found this one and glad this turned out as good as it did. All right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this review on the Master and Drum for the new Yellowstone 2021 limited edition finished in Amarone casks. If you did, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit the like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram, find me on Twitter. Let me know what you think of this one, if you've gotten it yet. Do you plan on getting this? It's kind of one of those releases where I normally don't spend the money on it, but the Amarone really piqued my interest. So, and I'm glad I did. So with that said, and as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time right here on the Master and Drum. Take care, everybody, and as my grandmother would say, ciao, bella.